We got a lot of things to discuss. So I'm going to bring in two people here, Nando Di Fino and Batflip Crazy. What's going on, guys?
What's up, man?
How we
Hey, Nick.
doing?
Nick, what's your camera? You're coming in so clear and it's
Ooh.
beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice of you, Nando. By the way, this is the first time we're meeting. It's great to meet you, man.
Yeah, you too.
This is a Lumix GH5 in
Write that
DSLR.
down, man.
I know. I went crazy with this murder room. But look, hey, Toby, you stepped it up too. Look at you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know what camera I'm using. It's my wife's camera, so
Well, it's a good one.
It works
and,
well.
And what we're going to be doing today, sadly, Chris Welsh is under the weather. It's all good because if there's any panel that I have to step in for, I'm happy it's this one where it's just about starting pitchers anyway. So I'm excited about this. And what we're going to be doing in this panel, I'm going to be taking a step back. I'm going to leave these two guys who know so much about this, especially Toby.
You might want to
Pocket
stick
Ace
around.
is here. Come on. I mean, it's the perfect panel for him. We're going to be talking about the second round decisions that you'll be making with your starting pitchers. And before we begin going into the actual players themselves, we had an idea to really talk about the strategy itself. So I want to start with you, Toby. Give us the best pitch as to why you should be considering a second round starting pitcher.
Well, we were kind of joking around about it beforehand about how they're all really good. So that would be a really good reason to draft a second round starting pitcher. But I think, when you think about the way that the draft board lays out, speed is obviously, in the first round, people are oftentimes looking at hitters with speed. You need to address that early because even with after those first 7 to 10 picks, the kind of elite speed guys that contribute in 5 categories are all there. So if you start off your draft there, I think there's a lot of options that you have for yourself in the second round to create kind of that balanced start where you're able to address a lot of the key kind of fundamental needs that your team is going to have as you build it out, and maintaining that flexibility moving forward as well. And when we think about the second round pitchers, it's just a great group of folks. You have Max Scherzer is going as late as the second round. We know what Max Scherzer does. He's elite every single time. You have your Brandon Woodruff, depending if you're in a 12 or a 15 team league, I think. Even some of the Sandy Alcantara's, even the Aaron Nolas, who had a bad year last year. When you look at the underlying metrics, they're really good. So I just think if you're trying to lay that kind of nice foundation of getting some speed and elite hitter in the first round, being able to get that pitching in the second round is key. And then if you're like me, maybe you think about doing, the 2 starting pitchers, one in the first round, one in the second round, because really the truly, scarce resource is those high volume, strong ratio starting pitchers that you can rely on.
Definitely. And are you still going with the pocket aces this year? Are you still leaning into that?
Yeah, I've done it in a few drafts. It depends. I think it is a challenge. I'm drawn to it. My natural inclination is to draft the 2 starting pitchers early because I feel like it makes drafting later a little bit. It doesn't leave you with as much flexibility, but later on, you're able to concentrate a little bit more on generating those plate appearances, those guys who are playing all the day, especially with fewer and fewer hitters getting full-time plate appearances with all the platooning that's happening. But I think this year it'll be a little bit of a mix. I think I do like getting one of those, even in the background, like Luis Robert, guys like that who, while he doesn't necessarily have the pedigree like him, Bryce Harper, you're getting speed, you're getting power, you're getting a decent batting average as well. And that is something that as you get later in the draft, even out into the third round, you start to look around and you're like, I'm giving up something here, whether it's batting average or speed. So I would still you'll still see me do the pocket aces, maybe once or twice. Who knows?
Sure.
Maybe even 3 straight starting pitchers. You never know what's going to happen.
Toby, I got to follow up, man. Sorry,
Yeah.
Nick. Go ahead. This is your thing. Go ahead.
No. My God, I just want to say it'd be the funniest thing ever if Toby, you and I were a co-manager. I think it would be the worst scenario we could possibly imagine. I mean, at the same time, it's like I think every single pick we want to do the opposite strategy, but then at the end of the day, we would do super well in season. But I just think that'd be the funniest like battle that we would say in drafts. Like, no man, no starting pitchers until the 6th round. I promise. But Nando, is this something that you would want to lean into? I mean, not necessarily even pocket aces, but are you thinking yes, starting pitcher in the 2nd round?
No, not really. I usually I'm more on the Knicks side. Like I like to wait.
Yes.
But I reverse engineer. So I start at the bottom. Like I'll do these drafts in January and February, and then go back and look and take stock of what I've done in like rounds 15 to 50, and just so I've got add up all these strikeouts. They're fine. I add up this WHIP and this ERA, and they're fine. And I do want to know if Toby changes strategy for points leagues though. Like, because every points league I'm in, it's like starting pitcher, first 3 rounds for everybody.
Right.
Like, do you try to zag when everyone else is zigging, or how do you switch it up at all for points leagues?
I don't play points leagues,
unfortunately.
Maybe
we're the real friends here.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't play points leagues.
It messes with your head, man. You're in a couple with friends, but it's like doubles. I don't want to count doubles.
It is, but like I think part of the thing that I love about fantasy is being able to juggle all those categories that are kind of like they're not. They don't like match, like getting home runs and getting stolen bases, or getting batting average and getting home runs. Being able to put together a balanced team is kind of what I love about the whole strategy and playing fantasy baseball. And that kind of goes out the window with points leagues. Like then I'm just like, oh, I'm going to type in my spreadsheet, like what the projections tell me, like this guy's points are going to generate me. And then I'm just going to take like the guy with the highest number of points. Not that that's the only strategy involved. I'm obviously simplifying it. But I'm very much like a roto person.
Yeah, it's the way to be, Toby. No points. I will say this: Adanu is fantastic. Niv Shah and company. I mean, really, such a fun format, and that opened the door for me with points leagues a little bit, but only that. That's it. Otherwise, we're getting too close to fantasy football, and that's stupid. So, not gonna do that. But yeah, Nando. I mean, 2nd round. I mean, if you were to go for somebody, is there someone that you're like, okay, you know what? I think this might be worth it.
There are a couple. When I was looking at we had a JPEG passed around in the DMs the last couple of days. I mean, a couple guys jump out, but no one like Walker Buehler. I consider more end of 1st round, so I take him off the table. Brandon Woodruff is someone I can't really figure out. I mean, I guess like I've got to just accept it that he's kind of amazing, despite because I'm a big guy who goes Baseball Reference, hide partial rows, look at the minor league numbers, and that's it. I just and I look at it and I read it like a little, I can just tell. You can see a couple things. The whip's good, the strikeout rate is high, and Woodruff didn't do that for me, so I never liked him the last few years, and now I don't know, he's just amazing. So when I'm doing the early rounds, I tend to kill my instinct of trying to jump and reach for some guys I like who are a little deeper. So this year I might actually grab Woodruff in the 2nd round because he's pitching like he's a 1st round pitcher right now.
Yeah,
and I think he's getting a little disrespected. I think in a way.
Definitely. So what we're gonna do now, I think, is kind of move into looking at those guys. There's about 8 or so that you could consider in about your 15-teamer in that 2nd round. Woodruff is a super popular one. What I've seen is the curveball just got better last year, got more strikes. The fastball looks really just amazing as you can get. Really, that's just such a dependable pitch through the year. I had a 29% strikeout, actually even close to 30% last year. Sub-1 WHIP, 2.56 ERA, and it does seem like he's more the workhorse in Milwaukee. Toby, is he your number 3 starter? I mean, after Cole and Burns, we're just going to ignore those. They're gone in the 1st round. And if Woodruff is there instead of, say, Buehler or maybe Wheeler or Scherzer, are you going after Woodruff?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a little bit of a I think it's between Woodruff and Scherzer for me. With Scherzer, he pitches well all the time. I mean, he's had one season in the last 10 years where he's had an ERA over 3, but there's kind of the lingering injury concerns, which we don't really have with Woodruff. And I think Woodruff, I would love to have Woodruff. Woodruff's absolutely fantastic. Like the fastball is great. Contextually, he's in an awesome situation with the Brewers, where I think the NL Central, from a hitting perspective, is going to be really weak this year. You're going to have the Pirates. You're going to have a diminished Reds team, a diminished Cubs team. Even the Cardinals, they're not really scaring you that much. And half of those games you're going to play at the Cardinals Stadium, which I think will be conducive for Woodruff as well. from a skills perspective, there's nothing to like, the swinging strike rate's great. The O swing's great. Like he doesn't walk anybody. He strikes everybody out. He can dominate inside the zone with the fastball velocity. So everything you want, he's providing for you. I have no problem whatsoever grabbing him in the I'd love to grab him in the second round. I think the challenge is in 15-team leagues, like whether he's going to make it there or not, especially as we get closer to March and we have a little bit of spring training and people are confident in, health and all of those things with the pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, with Scherzer, it's very interesting. Obviously, you mentioned the health and the eventual degradation because, he's not immortal. And there's always this feeling of playing chicken where you don't want to be the one that's holding on to Scherzer in that year where he just starts to fall apart. And we've actually kind of seen over the years the fastball be the most detrimental part of Scherzer's repertoire. That was why the home run rate was weird in 2020. And that's the only year it was above 3, I think is what you were saying there, Toby, which is like, okay, it was 2020, guys. And it was like a 3.5 or something like that. Wasn't even bad for you. But there is that feeling of maybe that fastball continues to get a little bit worse. It's below average when it comes to velocity. It's not this 95, 96 anymore that it used to be consistently. The slider is still this amazing, amazing, amazing pitch. But yeah, Nando, do you have any concerns about Max Scherzer?
Oh yeah, a ton, man. Like, I mean, even going to the Mets, that just seems to screw a guy up pretty badly. I mean, like, I know DeGrom and Syndergaard have had years of success, and the Mets kept their pitch. I just very slyly was like Mets pitching coach. I should have looked that up before the show. Sorry for the tapping.
Hefner.
But yeah, Hefner. Yeah, they kept him. So that kind of buoys me a little bit. But Scherzer to me just seems like a guy who, if you just kind of look at his entire arc and everything, is getting a little worn down with some injuries here that I think are just going to, I'm a big believer in one injury leads to another if you're overcompensating and coming back too quickly. The neck leads to the shoulder, leads to the elbow, leads to the knee kind of thing.
Oh, I love that song.
Yeah, right. The trickle down of, I don't know. It's just, this could be one of those things where a guy late career almost reinvents himself when the velocity starts to diminish. And we've seen that happen a few times, just become a little craftier. But I don't know, man. He makes me nervous just with getting a little older, stacked up injuries, kind of a new environment. I guess he's seen it a bunch being a national. But I don't know. I look at him and it just kind of grays out on my draft sheet and onto the next guy.
I mean, it is really shocking. I think a lot of people wouldn't believe that he had a .86 whip last year, taking away intentional walks, which is kind of nuts. 2.46 ERA along that way. I mean, Scherzer was great. The same amount of innings as Brandon Woodruff last year. The curveball is that called strike pitch, which is an elite one at that upper 20s percent. So that is just unheard of, really. And yeah, you still have that elite slider too. Shouldn't really change that much in New York, but again, the other guys here, I mean, we haven't even talked about Buehler, who is going ahead of both Woodruff and Scherzer, just seems more dependable through the year. And I've seen a lot of talk recently about, from Alexander Chase about the soft contact allowed is not that much from Walker Buehler, and his stuff wasn't as good last year. The sticky stuff may have been a reason for that. How is Buehler working into this conversation? Nando, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, like I said, I consider him a first rounder. So if I'm sitting at like 14, 15, 16, Buehler's going to probably be, and if he's still there, Buehler's probably going to be, the guy I grab before the turn and pair him off with a hitter. I look at him and I see upside. Like I look at Scherzer and I see the other side of the bell curve. Buehler's right here. I don't know. Like eventually I think maybe these postseason innings will catch up to him in like 3 or 4 or 5 years. But right now, man, like the sky is the limit. He's got everything you want from a starting pitcher. And I think, you see someone like Garrett Cole, who started off a little shaky in his career. I kind of see that same kind of trajectory where he just gets better and kind of, sure. I'm a Matt Medica guy too, and Medica loves him, and Medica will preach about him forever and ever. So maybe I got a little bit, like 15% of that is Matt Medica in the back of my head being like, Walker Buehler's amazing. But it just, for fantasy, he hits every category that I want, obviously except for saves. But you're right. I think dependable is the right word, but you got to pair that with still some upside left in Walker Buehler.
So Brad Keller last year, I know it's not the name you expected to hear right now, had about a 17% strikeout rate, if I remember correctly. The difference between Brad Keller and Walker Buehler's 26% strikeout rate is pretty close to Buehler's 26 and 35 with Max Scherzer. Is that any sort of concern here? Because that's the major thing is, this isn't a 30% plus strikeout potential guy. Or maybe he is. Nando, is that kind of in your thought process too?
Yeah, Bueller, I don't think has hit his peak yet. I think for me, there's still potential. Like you look at his track record, and you look at, I guess the Dodgers have a very good way of just getting pitchers along. Traditionally, I guess. But for me, Bueller is, I don't know, like 80% there, 20% still untapped awesomeness coming the next couple of seasons.
Nice. And by the way, I'm just noticing like your paintings behind you. Those are amazing.
Yeah, I'm in my garage. I got little kids sleeping inside, so I put a little corner up real nice, to make it look like it's not.
I mean, you did great. Oh man, Fisher Price.
Yeah.
So
these are a couple Comic-Con finds.
Awesome stuff. Toby, how are you feeling about Bueller?
I don't necessarily love Bueller, but I also think, and this might be like sacrilegious to say on this, but like at a certain point in a player's career, you just kind of look at what they've done and it's incredible. It's like with Bueller, you're going to get really good ratios. He's provided really good ratios. The strikeouts aren't necessarily going to be the same as the elite pitchers, but there's something to be said for like, a guy who really hasn't struggled in Major League Baseball at all. And a guy who's on the Dodgers and looks like he's their ace at this point in time and is going to get those starts. We have less of a concern about, the innings outside of a potential injury, but, that could happen to anybody. The one thing that I was looking at is it's interesting. His fastball velocity was down 1.5 miles last year.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why you see some diminishing returns in the strikeouts. And so it'll be interesting to see if that comes back, because I think reaching that ceiling that Nando mentioned was, like it's very possible if he just gets that fastball velocity back. He's been at 29% K rate, the past 2 years before that. So if that velocity returns, he's got another level that maybe he can reach. But, he's super good and he's going to get a lot of wins and he's going to have good ratios for you. And that's what you're looking for. May not have, the strikeouts, but, you can kind of live with that when they're still over 200, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, 201 innings last year for Walker Bueller. And when it comes to the velocity, it was 95.4 last year. In 2020, he peaked right under 97. But normally it was like 96 and change in previous years. So hopefully he does get that back. And it really did affect that four-seamer. It was about a 9% swing strike rate last year, which is not really what you think when it comes to Bueller. It's normally around 11%. And that definitely affected the strikeouts, considering the cutter, the slider, the curveball. Yes, there is a cutter and a slider. You normally don't see that, but there is one for Bueller, and all three of those are not really this huge elite secondary pitch. He really does rely on that four-seamer. So hopefully Bueller can get that back this next year. And all three of those pitches, though, they're strike pitches. Those are out pitches, though. Those are effective for him. It's just not necessarily the strikeouts. And all the worry of like the sticky stuff with Bueller, because he really was affected by that. I guess I'll ask this, because especially with the top guys, it's going to affect them the most because they're at such a high level. They have much farther to fall than everybody else. When it comes to, sticky stuff happened in June. Everyone was talking about Cole and Darvish, for example, but maybe some Bieber in there, some Walker Bueller as well. Are you guys really taking into account that? Are you expecting them to come back to where they were before the sticky stuff, or are you thinking that this is a new level for them? Nando, we'll start with you.
I'm actually kind of torn on that still. Initially, I was kind of like, oh man, we're screwed. Like I got to go back and I got to trace every single player and their spin rates from June 23rd on. And now I'm like, they're human beings and they've had 6-7 months now to figure out a new way to do this. I think the glass now thing scared a ton of people. And they just like, all right, let's worry about this off season. But they've had so much time and they're millionaires and they could just get, let me hire a dude for $10,000 on one shot to just see what he's got.
Right.
I think they're going to find a way to work around it. I mean, like the sticky stuff is next level. It's a concoction. It was amazing, but I think they're going to figure out a way around it. They'll be fine. I don't know what it's going to be. And maybe even something comes up into these CBAs, but I just think they're going to figure it out. I just put myself in their shoes and I'm like, yeah, they'll figure it out.
That makes a lot of sense. Toby, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of guys adjust already towards the end of the last year. I think one of the challenges is kind of like navigating kind of the narrative that's out there about how these guys are doing really poorly with some of the underlying metrics. Like that was one thing for Woodruff. For some reason I had in my mind, like Woodruff was heavily impacted by the sticky stuff. And there's certainly like a little blip. And I think you see it in a lot of like the rolling average graphs. If you look at those, is like, there's like that little dip in performance around June, but towards the end of the season, you start to see them, getting back to that elite peak again. And so whether it is they devised something else, they devised a way to get around it. Like they're creative, they're flexible. Chemistry is a fascinating subject. There's ways to make that ball sticky, So, and then there's like just the kind of rosin and sunscreen type stuff as well that happens. So I'm not too worried about it. I think with all of these guys, except for maybe Buehler, like I was just looking at the rolling average graphs, he seemed to be impacted. I think Urias as well was impacted a little bit there where, you saw some of the strikeout metrics and underlying skills kind of go the wrong way and stay there for a little bit. So I'm not too concerned about it, but, and I do think that hopefully they'll solve something in the CBA where they make a baseball that the pitchers can live with and handle well.
Isn't the most ridiculous thing that the baseball just constantly just changes and they don't tell anybody? It's unbelievable to me. But I mean, as you hinted at, Toby, some very smart people have suggested that maybe players found a way around the current rules to get the sticky stuff back in some way, as spin rates did overall increase in the second half of the year. Something to think about, and there is an idea that MLB, kind of was put into a tough spot, right? They had to do something. All these articles were coming out saying like, look at spider tack and how ridiculous this is. And everyone's like, yeah, this shouldn't be a thing, MLB. How dare you? You're ruining the game of baseball. So they said, fine, we're going to institute this rule. Like, you can't do it. Here are the rules for it. And we're done. So then all the players are like, oh man, what? And then they go, okay, like, I understand. Yeah, those are the rules. We get it. And then everybody's happy because, the people are not yelling about it anymore, but spin rates are back up and everything is kind of back to normal in a way. There's a feeling that might be it. So a guy like Buehler, who had this 26% strikeout rate, maybe that does go up next year because it's all fine and okay now.
They're not checking belts. They're not checking belts again this year, man. Stop the game. I got to check his belt.
I was going to say they
like
just
the first week. Like there was a guy who got a standing ovation. I think maybe it was a Gaussman or someone like that. And then all of a sudden it got stopped because the umpire's like, all right, give me the belt, give me the glove, and everyone started booing him. And it's like, that kind of sucks. It's not nearly as fun. So we'll see what happens out of that. All right. So Buehler, it sounds like to me, you guys are he's inside that top 5 conversation, right? I mean, is the ADP, I think I got it right from both of you really quickly. Is he the number 3 SP for both of you? Nando.
I think he's number 2 for me.
Oh, wow. Above
Let me just double. What do we count Ohtani as?
Not in this conversation.
Okay, then I would say Burns, Buehler, Cole for me.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Toby?
How disrespectful to Shohei Ohtani that you're
I
not
know,
going to include him in the
seriously.
conversation.
Hold on.
Holy
You
cow.
are the gold standard.
Hey,
NFBC
let's not include
stuff.
the
Hold on.
MVP in the conversation, people.
Okay. Let's make this very clear. If you are drafting Ohtani in a weekly league, how many weeks, Toby, are you going to be starting Ohtani as a pitcher and not a hitter?
Probably when he's a 2-start pitcher.
Is he ever going to be a 2-star pitcher? He had 19 starts last year.
I think he'll be a 2-star pitcher a couple times.
Nando?
I think so. I think you'll see it. I mean, he's batting every day now too. I think they're just going to take the wheels off a little more every year.
That's interesting. Oh man, 2 things. 1, he only had 19 starts when he never hit the IL last year. And I think that was by design. They wanted to, get his bat in the lineup more than overexert him for pitching. And with that in mind, like, even if you have a 2-start week, do you have a 2-start week? Every single week, you're like, is this really the dice roll I want to make? Even if he's on Monday, like, they might just push him back again because they did it so many times last year. And look, I want nothing more than the Angels to win the World Series. I think that would be the best thing for baseball. You have Mike Trout getting his ring. You have more Shohei Ohtani in the spotlight.
Really stand up a little bit.
It's just a great thing. That means Patrick Sandoval is doing wonderful things. It's great. But I am not going to just sit here and say that, oh yeah, Ohtani is definitely going to have 162 games again. Like I can't buy that. So to me, it just.
You're an Angels fan too, right? Like, look at that
Oh,
shirt.
well, I have. Yes, I'm actually wearing
Pablo Sandoval,
my
or not
Patrick
Pablo.
Sandoval
Patrick
32 whiffs shirt designed by Ethan Kaplan, who was on the graphics draw off last night. Love it. But it's just not something that I would consider. Ohtani, he's in the first round because of his hitting ability, not because of those 19 starts.
Well, let's just say, Nick, for instance, that you
Yes.
have a team and your
Aye.
team is a really good hitting team. And like midway through the season, you're like, you want to know something? Shohei Ohtani is more valuable to me as a pitcher than he is as a hitter for the rest of the season, because I got my homers locked up. I got my stolen bases locked up. My batting average, Shohei's not going to help you that much there. So like, talk about like the Swiss Army knife that your fantasy baseball team needs, to be able to determine, kind of at any point in the season, what Shohei is more valuable to your team as.
That makes a lot of sense. He's a first rounder though because of the hitting ability. And that's why we're having this conversation right now. By the way, you're talking about locked up. I'm literally envisioning Carl Urban from Thor 3 saying, "Here are my home runs," and it's just a safe of home runs inside of it. And like they're all locked up and secure. But Shohei Ohtani, not so much in this conversation. Nando, I want to go to you for a second here because the way you're saying Burns and Buehler, then Cole. And that would essentially mean that Cole is a second rounder to you. Why do you have Cole below Buehler?
I just like Buehler better. I think Cole's, I don't know. I don't like him in Yankee Stadium. I really think he's the one. And it's not like the sticky stuff affecting his hands. I think it's mentally, it kind of messed with him a little bit there. I don't know who his catcher is going to be for most of the games. It's just like I look at Garrett Cole and I just see like a bunch of red check marks versus a lot of green X's for Walker Buehler, basically. Maybe I have that backwards.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
gonna keep that.
Yeah, but it just in my head, I picture the two of them, and I got the pros and the cons list, and I just see Buehler still has some more upside, and I'm worried that Cole's a little older than some of us. Well, I mean, your first guess immediately, split second guess, is maybe still feel a little young, but he's been around for a while. I don't know, man. It's Cole, I just feel like a miniature bottom may not come out, but maybe like there's like a pinhole that someone poked at the bottom, whereas I just like Buehler better, and Burns to me is untouchable. So, I mean, I'm just not a Cole guy. I don't know. I can't.
Toby, what are your thoughts to that?
I mean, I love Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole's wonderful. I love him. No, I mean, he's my Garrett Cole's my number one starting pitcher. Just because like the consistency that he's had across the years, even last year, I mean, he struggled for bits and right around like when the sticky stuff went away, but you look at the metrics once, all of that stuff stabilized, over the last 10 games, he was right at his, 10 game rolling average for the last 3 years, 78.1% Z contact, which is absolutely dominant in the zone, 35% O swing, not going to walk a lot of guys, 30+% strikeout rate, 15% swinging strike rate, 6.3% walk rate. I think like a lot of the narrative around him like got tainted because of some of his starts against Boston towards the end of last year, where he just got totally shelled, and it kind of makes us forget a little bit that like he's just been great consistently for 3-4 years now, and he's doing that in one of the most difficult pitching environments that there is, like at Yankee Stadium, like Nando mentioned, and also going up against those AL East opponents all the time, and yet he's still been able to be incredibly effective. He should get a good amount of wins on that Yankees team. The strikeouts are 250 plus, every year. So I love Garrett Cole. So he's my number one, but I understand that other people may disagree with that opinion.
I mean, 181 innings last year, plus a hamstring injury, and he would have been above 200. You would imagine 33% K rate last year is just, even with all of the problems that he had, he still did that. Whip was bad at 106, 3.23 ERA, and I mean, still, even I know that's not what Buehler did, which was sub 250. But you got to think that, all right, you were completely right, Nando. You mentioned the mental stuff with Garrett Cole. saying I think right after sticky stuff, he started changing his approach because he didn't think his fastball was as good and throwing it lower in the zone, which is just wrong. Garrett Cole, you realized around like July and August, like, wait a second, no, I'm going to go fastballs up again like I used to. And then he started being successful again. Yeah, he did get blown up, I think, against the Red Sox. I think that's right. No, it was Cleveland that messed him up on the 19th of September, and that really messed up his September ERA. 700 runs in 5.2 innings. Yet he still had 7 strikeouts.
That was brutal down the stretch. Trying to win fantasy championships, Garrett.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll next time I talk to him, I'll let him know that he messed up your team, Toby. So I'll see how he reacts to that. But yeah, the way I
Tell
see
him
it
I still
is
appreciate him, though.
of course. I'll make sure I add that too. Don't worry, you'll be fine.
Yep.
Yeah, Garrett Cole is one of the most consistent starters out there at this point. You know that even in a tumultuous season, you're still getting elite stuff across the board. I see Walker Buehler. You're kind of hoping that he can produce like Garrett Cole too. There is a little bit more signs, I think, of, you're hoping that he does get back to the point. You're doing that with both of them, but I think Garrett Cole just kind of is a longer track record that makes more sense to me. But I'm not drafting any of these. I mean, I'm like, this is the funniest part to me is that you guys, you're all like maybe first, second round, these guys. No. I mean, this is not my thing, but that's fine. I'm happy to debate this all day. I enjoy it. I think you guys are crazy at times. I'm just joking. All right, we're going to move on here. Past Garrett Cole, past Scherzer, past Buehler, past Woodruff. And who is the next one? There's a lot of debate here. Some people are saying, look, I got to go after Jacob deGrom. There's just so much potential. There's so much quality in every single game he throws. That's who I'm going with. No, I want to go after Zach Wheeler. 2.74 ERA last year. The Phillies are getting a little bit better bullpen too, to help him when he does get removed from games. He won't have to go sometimes fourth time through the lineup or so. And that was a 4.10 ERA when he was facing the lineup the third time. Maybe that gets removed and the ERA and the ratios are better. There's also Sandy Alcantara in there. And by the way, someone said Sandy Alcantara is an ace, donated $125 to the cause. So thank you so much for that. JR Kane's also $25 to it. Go to the link below, pitchlist.com/PitchCon to support the cause now. Hit the giant contribute button. But of those guys I just mentioned, Nando, who are you taking?
Actually, man, I'm leapfrogging with probably Urias and probably Shane Bieber. Honestly,
wow, you're pushing those guys up. Okay.
Well, those names you just mentioned, like they all have blips in there. Zach Wheeler's not a stranger to a 4 ERA. Like all of them have like these little. Sandy Alcantara could revert a little bit. I like him a lot, but I like that Marlins staff a lot. But he's probably the one. If you force me to take one of them, it would be Alcantara. But I love Urias, and I really think Bieber is just going to get back into the saddle.
Oh man, I have a lot to talk about that, but.
Well, to do it on the third round panel. Yeah,
let's do that one. Yeah. Toby, how you feeling about
the sixth round pitcher panel?
Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, for me, I mean, I think the thing is like with DeGrom, it's impossible to say now. I mean, there are some people who are willing to push him up and draft him right now, but I just think like, what? I want to see him pitch during spring training. And if he pitches in during spring training and he's solid, then he jumps right to the front of all the pitchers, right? Like, and you can say he gets injured this, he gets injured that. I mean, the dude is he's next level. He's on a different level. And if I get literally like 120 innings of Jacob deGrom next year, I'm perfectly fine taking him, in the first round. Bieber is similar in the sense that like he had the arm injury last year. He came back, he threw a little bit. I just want to see kind of where the velocity is in spring training. Like as long as he's healthy, he jumps up in the conversation as well. Like in the projections that I have, like Bieber is actually, I think he's SP number 4 or 5, like based on the projections, which are assuming health. So if he's healthy, I think he's got it. And, I can't remember what the, I can't remember what it was, but how many games in a row he struck out 10 or more batters, like 14 or something ridiculous. He was leading the league in strikeouts when he was injured. I mean, the guy can do everything, and he's also going to be in the AL Central, which I think will be slightly better, but won't be great. So in the absence of those two, I think I like Wheeler a lot. He doesn't have the track record necessarily that some of the other guys do, but he now has 4 consecutive seasons with, sub 4 ERA, 278, 292, 396, and 331. He's shown ability to suppress home runs, which I think is really critical and is actually something that's pretty consistent with this group of second round guys. Like Nando mentioned, Julio Urias. He also, is able to suppress home runs, but 0.68 home runs per 9 for Wheeler, 0.38. In the one season where he struggled with his ERA, he did have a 1.01, but that was also the juiced ball 2019. So in the absence of another incredibly juiced ball, he should be able to suppress home runs. He doesn't walk guys. He's got a, mid-30s O swing. He's in the zone consistently. He's been able to dominate more. He changed up his pitch mix a little bit, minimized the fastball kind of sinker, and he threw, I think, the slider a little bit more. He also increased the velocity on that, which made it, I think, a more effective pitch to use. So you have the combination of that. The Phillies have a good offense. He's going to throw you, it's so weird to say like Zach Wheeler's going to throw you a ton of volume, just because for so many years it was like injury after injury after injury. But he threw 213 innings last year. He had 195 in 2019, 182 in 2018. There's no reason why they're going to, limit him at all. So I do like Wheeler probably out of that group after, the Scherzer, Woodruff, Burns, Cole.
Yeah, Wheeler is my number 5. The volume is going to be there. The increased slider usage last year really pushed the strikeouts forward. It's kind of funny. He was sub 20% strikeout rate in 2020, and everyone said, is the strikeouts going to be there? And I remember distinctly after he left the Mets in 2019, by the way, they had Wilson Ramos as their catcher, which if you're ever rooting for a pitcher, you do not want Wilson Ramos as your catcher. The way he frames pitches is the most frustrating thing in the world. He just gives up on them. He's just like, whatever. It's fine. I'm like, no. And please, when you throw a fastball, don't set up middle. When Noah Syndergaard can actually hit a spot. If he have it middle, he's going to throw in the middle and they're going to hit it harder. And with Wheeler, he didn't really set him up anyway in a beneficial way, if I can say sentences, my God. So excited. He was going off to the Phillies and JT Realmuto and all this stuff. And 2020
JTR.
was a small, it was, yeah, right. Yeah, you're a big fan, Toby? I had no idea. And
great guy.
And the first year in 2020, kind of weird. They were getting used to each other. But really, we started to see all the approach changes last year with Wheeler, more elevated fastballs and those sliders down and away. And 29% strikeout rate last year for Zach Wheeler. I don't think that shifts necessarily higher than that up into 30% plus. If anything, it's going to be closer to 25%. But it's going to be so much volume. The ERA and WHIP I still think are going to be great. The question is, how is the defense of the Phillies? They really burned both Nola and Wheeler last year. But yeah, as you mentioned, Toby, the home run suppression is great. I think he's just so good. I think that fastball, you watch a start with Zach Wheeler and you never feel as if he should lose. You just watch him and go, he's just, the fastball. How do you ever hit this? Oh, and there's a slider too now, which was the missing element for so long. As the curveball and split change were trying to be that strikeout offering. Now you have this slider that just is great. So Zach Wheeler to me is just more consistent than Scherzer and DeGrom. One thing I did want to mention, Toby, was you said DeGrom for 120 innings, you're fine with that. One thing I kind of want to ask both of you here, in season, I mean, when you're drafting these guys, like, okay, 120 innings from DeGrom, how much are you thinking about yourself in season? That is, if you have DeGrom on your NFBC team or, TGFBI or whatever it is, a 15-teamer, those bench spots are super valuable. There is no IL spot, right? And let's say it's the middle of May and all of a sudden DeGrom is on the IL for 2 weeks with something. At what point are you going to be thinking, okay, I need to hold on to DeGrom? Because it's not necessarily like, hey, you get 120 innings. That's the average of expectations of, it could be 20 innings. It could be 150 innings from DeGrom. Is that in consideration at all in season? Nando, we'll start with you.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't really release DeGrom. So I think you're kind of screwed. Yeah, he's just going to – he'll be there. I'm the kind of guy who's like, so say you got the 120, say you miss you know, 40 or 50 in the middle. And when he comes back in July, you know, that's like getting a player in a trade kind of thing. I'm more of that, you know, he's going to help me and he's going to supercharge that team the rest of the way. But yeah, I mean, like you know, you have to do it at that point. You just got to hold and hope, basically.
Oh no.
But I mean,
Oh,
that
no.
120 could come with 160 strikeouts and crazy ERA and WHIP, and you know, like that's going to help you more, I think, than just some dude who's going to, you know, 369, 133, and like an 8.7 K per nine.
I
You know,
feel like I'm
we
going to
go
call this
9-8.
Leonardo DiCaprio, as in the Titanic, holding and hoping, and it just doesn't work. Toby, how do you feel about, you know, those injury guys? Are you planning to avoid them, or are you just saying, you know what, this is part of the deal, and I'm okay with that?
Well, I think that Jacob DeGrom is kind of like in his own universe, you know, like the dude is just utterly dominant. Like, you're expecting like a 2 ERA from the dude at this point, like for whatever
Right.
those innings are that he throws. You know, last year's a really good example. Like, I'm actually like, when it comes to kind of injuries and NFBC and keeping guys on my team, it depends on who they are, but I'm generally actually in the camp that like, I'm generally pessimistic. So like with Jacob DeGrom last year, I dropped him pretty early, like with a couple months left in the season at least, because, you know, when you just think about like what the prognosis is, like let's say it's 6 to 8 weeks, you always tack on a little bit of time onto that. And then you got to think like, okay, he does that. Then he's got to have his you know, 2 starts before he pitches in the majors, or his 1 start. You know, you get to see those St. Lucie, whoever they are, tweets about like how DeGrom is pitching against them and why is this happening, and like life isn't fair. But but like generally, like I mean, it's the same case with like any pitcher that gets injured, right? Like with DeGrom, you know, you can be like, oh well, last year he was injured, and it's like, well, yeah, but the year before, you know, the 3 years before that, he had 200 innings pitched, you know, so it's not like for some reason other than like the velocity, the fact he's throwing 100 miles per hour, like on every single
Unreal.
pitch, like you know, why he's like inherently more like quote unquote injury prone. Like he had an injury last year, but if he returns to where he had been the previous, you know, few seasons, like you're talking about a 200 ERA guy or a 200 inning pitch guy. I mean, a 200 innings pitched for Jacob DeGrom, like with what he does right now, I mean, that is unbelievable production.
Crazy.
So
Absolutely nuts.
it's a risk reward continuum, and like you kind of handle each player, like their injury. Like if he's gone for 2 weeks, I mean, yeah, that's fine with me. Like if he's only out for 2 weeks, if he's out for a month, I mean, you know, whatever, he's still going to get like 150 plus innings. So I really, you know, I'm fine with it as long as he looks good in spring training. As long as he looks good in spring training, he's healthy in spring training, I have no problem bumping Jacob DeGrom up my draft board.
It's very interesting. You mentioned Bieber in that talk too, and I think that's a much bigger weight for me. My huge concern about Bieber is those 2 starts he came back with in September, diminished velocity by a significant amount, 2 ticks underneath, where we saw the same injury from Pablo Lopez, and he actually was throwing harder than before. And with Bieber, command of everything, even including the breaking balls, was just not there in those 2 outings. Which, I mean, it could be a case of, hey, just go on the field, just do the thing, like don't worry about it. Or it could be, hey, yeah, you're ready and it's not there, and maybe this is a case of, yeah, you're not going to return to that overwhelming ability. And not to mention, before the injury, and it was right before the sticky stuff happened, he had a whip over 120 because the fastball just was not doing well. Strikeouts galore. ERA was great, all that stuff. But there were still some problems with Bieber that wasn't, you know, we were wondering, is he still a top 3 guy? Is he not? I mean, this whip is really bad, but it feels like he should be better. But the fastball is still very hittable, and now there's a diminished velocity. I mean, I'll be focusing on him a lot in the spring to see, hey, at the very least, you got to get the velocity back because that fastball was getting hurt already. Is this how it is with you, Nando, or are you just kind of saying, you know what, those 2 starts, September, you guys really should not worry about it?
Well, I'm leaning on that and hoping that's what it is because, you know, like, again, I put myself in the head of a 20-something-year-old who, you know, he didn't just come out fresh. He was rehabbing a little bit. He was throwing. He knew his limitations. The coaching staff knows, like, you know, this is the guy who's going to carry us at some point, you know, 2-3 years from now.
Right.
So, like, yeah, I think he just kind of went out and saw what he could do and didn't try to push it too hard. Why ruin it for a useless September start? That might just be some fanfic, but I don't know. Like I'm banking on that being like, again, the just the mental makeup of a 20-something-year-old who knows his limits and kind of knows where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and the spring training thing I go back to, and I'm worried again. Every year, remember it actually was, I think it was DeGrom 4 or 5 years ago, that huge deal was made about his diminished velocity in spring training, and he came out and had a crazy year. So again, like I don't know if he's going to go out and just like throw sliders. You know what I mean? Like velocity,
Right.
he doesn't care about it, and hold back. And we don't even know what spring training is going to look like. It's such a mess. Like I don't think we're going to have an answer. I think Shane Bieber's like jumping without a net and just hoping that you stay on that wire, because you're not like you can't draw any conclusions from a lot of this stuff anymore, because there's so many excuses you could make for why that was happening.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on to someone else that you mentioned there with Julio Urias, that you wanted above a lot of those guys. What's pushing you to Urias there, Nando?
Oh man, I love him. He's still young. I mean, all his numbers in the minors were amazing. I think he just had a rocky start. Didn't know if he was a reliever or a starter at first. But this is a guy who can I think legitimately give you like a 2.4 something ERA, a 1.01 or 2 WHIP, and just like an 11 to 12 K per nine. He's still growing. He's still getting better. I think he's going to pitch a full season. So, yeah, man, I'm all over him. I think you're just looking at the numbers and take away the name or any preconceived notion we have of him, and he's a stud in the making. Or he's already there. I mean, I think he's already there. But I mean, I don't know why more people aren't pushing him up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself pushing him into the teens initially, like around 10, 11. And I think I currently have him at 9 on my ranks. And the big thing there is the fastball is super effective, 11% swing strike rate last year. Tons of strikes with it. If anything, he got burned on that, if any, pitch, but he throws that under 50% of the time because he turned his 2 breaking balls into 1 with that amazing curveball. Seriously, one of the better ones out there these days. And a changeup that gets a ton of outs. There's a lot to like there. There have been some concerns that his innings last year were pushed over 200, including the postseason. And this is someone that the Dodgers have been very careful with, a labrum, I believe, injury before, and wondering if that workload was too much and might affect him. That, I think, is the biggest pushback. But, Toby, yeah, how are you considering Urias in drafts this year?
Yeah, I'm like struggling because it's like he's kind of, in some ways, he's like a Walker Buehler clone in the sense that like with a different repertoire, but
and they look the same,
He yes, he consistently keeps the BABIP low, like he consistently limits the home runs, like the quality of contact. But when you look at like the underlying skills, like they're not really there to necessarily like support what he's doing, like the swinging strike rate is relatively low, 11.2%. When you look at the CSW, which I know at Pitcher List, we love to do, it's at 29.7%. When you look at that compared to previous seasons, like it's a slight upgrade, but it's not like a huge upgrade. And yet we saw like, his highest strikeout rates that we've seen, in 2019, when he had a 13.7% swinging strike rate, he had a similar K percentage. So I worry a little bit about, the K percentage, but I also think like, to Nando's point, like this is a really young guy who's still developing and can get to that next level. He's obviously on the Dodgers, so the context is going to be really good. But like what kind of worries me a little bit about him is just like when I look at, because I'm like a rolling average graph person, which is probably a weakness of mine. But like when I look at his rolling average graph, like over his last 10 starts, like the Z contact, the in zone contact rate was up at 87%. The swinging strike rate was down below 10% at 9.6%. So again, like he was still able to be effective and be a really good starting pitcher doing that. But like that just concerns me a little bit that the underlying metrics don't necessarily support that. And there are pitchers who can pull that off on a consistent basis. But for me, like when I'm looking at like, what some of the underlying metrics for some of the other guys going in this range are, like I just prioritize them over Urias.
It's kind of interesting. Since July 16th through the end of the year, just one game above 8 strikeouts for Urias, which is a little shocking considering the solid strikeout rate that he has. I mean, a lot of those are he had double-digit strikeout games, 4 of them in the first 3 months. Does make you wonder, maybe the sticky stuff got to him too there. Maybe there wasn't some, I don't know. But, that's a very easy thing that we've been doing, is saying, oh, April through June versus July through August or through September. I don't know. I mean, it's also didn't go as deep into games. A lot of 5-inning starts for Urias in that time. And it makes sense. The Dodgers wanted to be careful with Urias, who I don't know if you guys actually know the age. We know he's young. Do you realize he's still 25?
It's crazy.
That's nuts. I mean, in the middle of next season, in August, he's going to turn 26. I mean, Urias has been around since he was 19, which is crazy. And yeah, to that point, I mean, younger players are able to recover better and be more consistent, I think. Just based on our buys. I'm 33 now, and I'm thinking, oh, when I was 27, oh man, how lovely it was.
You poor 33 man.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. I get it. I understand. I'm with you guys now. So it is very interesting to see. Like, yeah, he just changed last year. Urias added, made that breaking ball better. And there may be some other things that he can do to continuously improve. So Urias is someone I feel very safe with. And I got to say, if I'm taking a pitcher in the second round, I better feel safe with them. I think that's the most important element to me, is you want to make sure that you have these starters that you don't need to think about the entire season if you can. And Urias, I believe, should be one of them. I want to, we're running out of time here. I want to make sure we hit on one guy. It's Sandy Alcantara, because everyone knows he's my favorite dude ever. Toby, we'll start with you here. How do you feel about Sandy Alcantara? Can you depend on him in that second half for 2022?
Yeah, this is one of the guys where like it really, my love for projections gives me a really difficult time, because the projections don't love Sandy, which I think could be that, the fact that like he's continuously outperformed his, ERA, his ERA estimators. Like, he always outperforms, his XFIP and FIP and Sierra, just because he's able to limit contact so much, keep the BABIP low, keep the home runs per 9, relatively low. Like, he had the uptick in velocity in the second half. I mean, when I look at like his last 10 games, his in-zone contact was 83%, which is good. It's not great, but like the O swing was over 40%. The K rate was at 29.4%. The walk rate was at 3.3%. And the swinging strike rate was at 16%. I mean, that's like just, terrific. And I had him like on a bunch of teams last year. And my one problem with him is that he's on the Marlins, and their offense sucks. And their offense is going to continue to suck. Like, if anything, it's gotten worse. I mean, that lineup is going to be absolutely putrid, barring them signing additional guys. Like Avisail Garcia, I like him a lot, but like they lost Starling Marte at the trade deadline. Like, it's just awful. And there were so many games, and maybe I shouldn't include this in my judgment because it's like, just like anecdotal stuff, but like, how many games did he have last year where he was like pitching in the ninth? He'd given up 1 run. He had like 11 Ks, like just absolutely dominating. And he's down 1-0, or the game's tied 1-1. Like, he's just like, I don't know if you can count on the wins, and it's terrible to like base something on that. And so if you're getting him at the back, like in the third round or whatever, like, I think that's fine. I have to figure out exactly where I am with him, because I love him. And at the same time, like, I haven't found myself drafting him at all. But I've also been drafting towards the back end of the draft a little bit, where you're kind of more in like the Wheeler, Woodruff, Scherzer zone. So we'll see.
Oh man. All right. So do you have the same concerns, Nando?
No, I mean, like, with me, it's just, I don't think he's ever going to be like a 2.45 ERA, a 10.5 strikeout per 9 guy. I think he's always going to be floating above 3, and his K per 9 is going to float a little below 9. I'd like to yield the rest of my time to you, since you're an Alcantara guy. Please, I'm just going to hear the same stuff from me, man. Go ahead. Go, Nick. Go. This is your show.
No, it's not. 31% strikeout, usage of that slider during that amazing run, which had a 67% strike rate and a 36% CSW last year. I mean, if you want to talk about him being a 30% strikeout guy, that's what he was during those starts. Velocity went up as well. I understand the concerns about wins, but I mean, did it stop us from drafting DeGrom and stuff back in the day and stuff? And he's, even with his 9 wins, he was still amazing for us. I definitely see a sub 3 ERA potential here with Alcantara. If you take away his Rockies and Dodgers starts, I mean, those were like just exceptionally just messed up in cores, and against the Dodgers once, it's essentially a 2.5 ERA. So fine, maybe those starts are like a little bit worse, or not so bad, but then it's like a 2.8, 2.9. And I think that's very much within the grasp of Alcantara. Changes usage again from being changeup heavy to making that actually the third pitch with a slider, stepping in number 2. And it's just like Zach Wheeler. I mean, it's kind of funny. They both have these ridiculously overpowered fastballs that don't allow home runs and are stupid hard to hit. And then they both adapted the slider last year and became strikeout guys. And I kind of like Alcantara's third pitch more than Wheeler's curveball and split change. That changeup is still really filthy. So there's so much to like here. I think Alcantara just keeps getting better every single year. The Marlins, though, yeah, you're right. He's not going to get those same wins. And if you're looking at this saying, look, I need to get 14 wins or so out of my SP1, yeah, you're probably not going to get that with Alcantara. But, hey, it could be 11, 12, and that might be fine. They have to win some games, They're not going to go 20 wins and 142 losses. They're going to win some. And hopefully Trevor Rogers and Alcantara win those. But yeah, I understand those concerns if that's one of the things, and I get it. But you can see 200 innings out of Alcantara this year, and also just the joy of having him on your team and watching him pitch is something that is a little underrated. I think you're gonna see areas he gets pulled after 5, and then you're like, wait, Alcantara's still going in the 7th, and I can continue to watch this game. It's really, really fun doing that. It gets you giddy inside. So I'm going Alcantara at 8. I don't care, guys. I'm not doing it. No Bieber for me. No Urias for me.
He's your 8th. He's your number 8. Is that what you're saying?
Number 8. I'm actually tempted to put him at like.
I know. I was going to say you're like talking him up like Wheeler, but Wheeler's your 5. Well, and Alcantara's your boy, and he's at 8. Like
the problem is that DeGrom exists. And I mean, Wheeler just did it for a full
That's a problem. That sounds really harsh to DeGrom. Like he exists.
Yeah,
being a problem.
You can't ignore DeGrom is the thing. Like he exists. Like I mean, there's a part of me that wants to put Alcantara above that, and then there's the Scherzer question too about like how much we're getting out of that. So I can't ignore all of it. There's a temptation of Alcantara at 7 inside tier 1, but
do it, man.
Just projecting too much of the ceiling, so I can't do
that. You believe in him, man. Just said he could have a 2.3 ERA. Go for it.
I didn't say 2.3. Nando, get out of here. 2.8. 2.8 is what I was saying. Okay, I believe in the guy though. He's the guy I love. But anyway,
man,
guys,
I really hope you believe in me someday, Nick, and put me as number 8 on your list.
So I don't draft Toby's.
Okay? Oh, ouch! You found a way to put it in there. Oh
no,
painful.
Guys, really,
you're bringing up a lot of stuff.
We made it work. This was great. Seriously, fantastic discussion. But also, there'll be one more panel talking about a lot of these early pitchers with MLB moving averages tomorrow. Definitely stay tuned for that presentation. Can't wait for that one. But really, Nando, Toby, thank you both so much for being a part of this. I'm glad we can make it work. And talk to you guys soon.
Take care, guys.